Hello and welcome to Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. My name is Kelly and I'm a former wedding planner and blogger, and I'm obsessed with weddings. If you're planning a wedding in Ireland, you're in the right place. You're going to learn the tried and tested methods to planning your dream wedding without the added stress. Think of this as your one-stop shop for everything to do with planning your wedding in Ireland, with me, your new wedding planning bestie, and a cup of tea. This is Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online. Well, hello, happy Wednesday, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online podcast. Today's episode is hopefully going to help you shape your wedding budget, because I'm going to talk about things that you should save your money on and things you should splurge on. So what's going to be helpful is by the end of this episode, you're going to have an idea of what's actually worth putting money into when it comes to your wedding. And now, before we get into it, let me just set the tone by saying that weddings are very emotional and very personal. So they might feel like a very, very big financial decision, which they are, but it's important to understand that there's the financial side of things and then there's the personal, emotional, sentimental side of things as well. So we're going to go through some key areas of the day, and I'm going to walk you through my honest opinions and some practical strategies of what you should splurge on and what you can save on. And you might be thinking, who do you think you are to even do this? Let me just tell you, I'm obsessed with weddings, firstly. I've planned my own wedding. I was a wedding planner and have been in the wedding industry planning weddings, blogging about weddings, researching weddings for many, many years. And so I can tell you that I've seen so many people saying that, they wish they had spent money on this thing. They wish they didn't spend money on that thing. In fact, I'm going to draw your attention to something from episode 147. That's from 2 episodes ago. We spoke all about wedding regrets. And I had some newlyweds share their wedding regrets with me. And these two I thought were hilarious because they both represent two polar opposite ends of the spectrum when it comes to wedding money. So one person said this. One person said, set a budget and stick to it. If you can't afford it, don't do it. Don't stress too much about decor, extras, and that kind of thing, because no one's going to notice anyway. So that was the one side of the spectrum. Then another person said, controversial, but we panicked too much about money and we didn't get the little extras we would have really liked because of it. So I'd be more relaxed on the budget and not being so uptight. So the reason that I shared that is because there are two different approaches to wedding budgets. And when it comes to saving and splurging, it is a nuanced thing. So I'm going to walk you through a couple of specific examples, but I'm going to share some of the nuances with you, because for some couples, an area is one you should definitely splurge on. But another couple, that might not be a priority for them and they can save on that thing. And so it's not going to be a one size fits all. Some of these things will definitely be a thing that everybody should save on or everybody should splurge on. But most of the items come down to your priorities for your wedding and the things that mean the most to you. So I can understand, firstly, that you're thinking, how can we do this as cheap as possible? Because a lot of people think that way. But let me say this isn't about just being cheap. It's about being really intentional. So it's about putting money where your priorities are and not spending money on things that don't mean as much to you. So what I always say to couples is the first thing you should do when you plan your wedding, before you set the date, before you book a venue, before you make big decisions, is to work out your priorities. So if you know your priorities, then you're going to know where you should put your money. So with that in mind, let's go through this one category at a time, and I'm going to explain why you should save or splurge on some of these things. Now, when it comes to photography and videography, and I'm going to add in here content creation as well, because it's kind of part of your wedding media team. My verdict is to splurge, and here's why. Your wedding photos, your wedding videos, these are part of your lifelong memories. So you're going to revisit these like every anniversary. Your future generations are going to see these pictures and videos. Like, I'm having a little girl and I want to show her my pictures from my wedding day and the video, and I want her to be able to see what her parents looked like on their wedding day. So this is something that you're going to revisit over and over and over again. You're probably going to print wedding photos and frame them, put them in your home. You don't want to do it on the cheap. You don't want to end up with a photographer who is inexperienced and misses some of the key shots. You want to make sure that you are actually giving the attention to your photos that they deserve. So I always say avoid having the cheap options, like going for a student who's inexperienced and looking to just kind of get their portfolio together, because the experience actually really matters. It's not only about the fact that an experienced photographer can get the best shots and they don't miss those moments, but it's other things like reliability, it's backup equipment, it's often having a second shooter, it's being super connected in the industry. So if your photographer wakes up on the morning of your wedding and they are really ill, what are they going to do? If it's a student, they probably don't have somebody they can just call up and say, can you please step in for me? But a well-connected professional photographer will have backup options for all of these things. They'll have backups of backups. So you want to make sure that you pick somebody who's reliable, somebody whose editing style you love. And to know if you really love their editing style, you want to make sure that you're looking at a full gallery, not just the highlights of 10 different weddings. You want to look at a whole gallery and to tell if that's a style that you resonate with. So the verdict with photographers, videographers, content creators is splurge. Okay, here's another one, dessert. Now this one, I'm going to say the verdict is save. But if you have a sweet tooth and going big on desserts, candy buffets, cookies, cupcakes, chocolate fountains, if that is a thing that gets you excited, then I'm going to say splurge. For the most part, you can save, but what I'm not saying is don't have any dessert. I'm saying you could have one amazing cake that you have as it's on the dance floor as people come into the reception venue, but it also serves as your dessert. Like most people aren't going to need cake, a dessert, and a candy buffet. So if you're not a person with a huge sweet tooth, you can keep your desserts intentional and simple by prioritizing one of those things. So like I said, a cake that serves as dessert or a candy buffet that serves as your wedding favor. There are a couple of different ways that you can do things here. But the idea is that you have to lean into your priorities. So if you are a sweet tooth person, you want to splurge. But if you're not, find creative ways to factor in your sweet treats without going crazy and overboard. Okay, here's another one. The champagne toast. For me, save. And here's why. It's a lovely idea, but it's normally unnecessary. Guests can literally toast you with anything that they have, like any drink. They can be holding their whiskey or a glass of wine or something. It doesn't have to be Prosecco or champagne. So to get all the staff to pour 100+ glasses of Prosecco just for a toast, to me seems like it's just not worth it. If you still want to have a champagne moment, you could always have something like champagne on arrival or like Prosecco on arrival or just after the ceremony. Like you can still factor it in, but it doesn't have to be that every time someone does a toast that their glasses must now be topped up. Because what ends up happening is either the staff needs to go and do that, they've got to top up the glasses, or you put the champagne or Prosecco on the tables and then you end up with like 10 or 15 bottles of like half full of champagne, which is just weird and a waste. So I say save. Find other things that you can spend that money on. Okay, here's another one. The music. My verdict is splurge. And here's why. Even if the party is not a priority for you, music itself is going to set the tone for the whole day. So if you have an amateur setup, you're going to end up with awkward silences, you're going to have songs that are repeated, you may have technical issues. So you know how we spoke about photographers and having backup equipment? Professional musicians are the same. They're going to make sure that no matter what happens, they've got like 3, 4, or 5 spare cables for something, backup lights and speakers and everything. So you're not just paying for the music, you're paying for the experience and the technical support. Okay, so speaking about music, I was at a wedding once with a couple wanted to have the party, but they couldn't afford to prioritize the music. And I totally get it. It happens. But their solution, which I've seen a lot of people suggesting, their solution was let's get a Spotify playlist and just plug it in. And now, if that's what you're thinking, this is in no way a judgment on your thought processes. But from my experience, it doesn't work. And here's why. And this isn't even about having the paid or the free Spotify. If we used my Spotify, there would be ads in the middle, which would be incredibly awkward. But even if you have the paid one and you have ways of crossfading songs and whatnot, and even if you've gone to great efforts to make an amazing playlist, what ends up happening is your playlist becomes accessible to everybody in the room. So your friend may be like, oh, I don't like that song. And halfway through, they go and change it. It's happened. I was at a wedding where that's exactly what happened. Same song played a couple of times because people were like, oh, I haven't heard that yet, because they were outside when the song played, and then they went and played it themselves. And it just becomes chaotic. So having a professional DJ or a band, it just means that the song choices are intentional, and it means that you don't have to think about guests getting involved and interfering with stuff. Okay, my final category that I'm going to go through is the wedding planner and coordinator side of things. My verdict is to splurge if you can, but if you can't, splurge on an on-the-day coordinator. So if you have the money for a full-service wedding planner, great. But not everybody does. In that case, having a coordinator just for the day is incredibly helpful because that person will work with your venue team. It keeps the stress off your shoulders, and it can be quite an essential thing for anybody who's planning a wedding from abroad. So it means you get the support on the ground. So before we finish, I'm going to give you 3 really, really quick things that you can keep in mind to save money on your wedding if this has got you panicked. Okay, these are my money saving tips. Tip number 1, pick an off-peak day or season. So if you get married midweek, if you get married in the winter, your day is not going to be any less special, but it's often going to be cheaper. Second thing, I know it sounds harsh, but trim your guest list, because if you have fewer guests, then you have fewer items per head. So it's fewer meals, fewer wedding favors, and ultimately less stress at the end of the day. And then the third thing when it comes to saving money is just ask. If a supplier is incredible, but outside of your price range, they may be able to tailor things and give you a smaller, more affordable package. But if you don't ask, the answer is always going to be no. So just put yourself out there and say, I love your work. I wondered if you'd be able to do anything with this budget, and see what they say. So I'm going to give you my final thoughts. Your wedding really should reflect your priorities. I will say that time and time again, it's all about your priorities. So spend where it matters most to you, and then don't get caught up in what people online are saying you should spend money on. I know I'm a person online, but I'm giving you my professional perspective. Spend where it matters to you. It's all about the experience, not the price tag. So there often is an affordable way of doing most things, but it's about being creative, and it's not about doing things on the cheap. So if you're intentional about your budget and you're willing to let go of a few things that you consider extras, you can have a day that feels like a luxury day, even if you're actually working with a smaller budget. I fully believe that that is the case. Well, thank you for listening today. The Wedding Wednesdays with Weddings Online podcast is produced by me, Kelly, and mixed, mastered, and edited by Glenn Hartman. For more wedding planning tips, advice, checklists, and more, visit weddingsonline.ie.